Hey there, I am so glad you're here. Come on in and enjoy Coffee Chat at the Cubby Hole. Okay, you might be thinking, coffee sounds fun, but girl, what is the Cubby Hole? The Cubby Hole was a divine little nudge on my heart, if you will, to build the space in our basement, in our home, where our friends and family could come and receive encouragement and love. And that's exactly what we've been doing. I've always known that the Cubby Hole would have a ripple effect out into the world, that it could bring encouragement and hope, not just to people that could visit here in person. That is exactly why I do coffee chats. I get to take some of the coolest people that are just like you and just like me, who have skill and talent, but most importantly, they have a vulnerable, relatable story that we can all glean some hope and encouragement from. So grab a coffee, cozy up, and enjoy Coffee Chats at the Cubby Hole. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee Chat at the Cubby Hole. I am so glad you're here. Oh, we have such a great conversation we're going to have today. We're going to talk about so many awesome things, inspiring things with my guest, Kristen Weber. Before I bring her in, I just wanted to say that, you know, ladies or guys, if you're out there and you, first of all, if you are not on my Reveal to Heal page, I invite you to join me over on that page here on Facebook. I love to put out a lot of content that talks about how we can reveal the stories and the adversities and the trials that we go through in our life, and how to reverse the power that they have over us, which may be causing limited beliefs or sabotage or unrest, and how we can ultimately walk through that and be on our way to healing. So the reason I mention it is that this week I put a video out. I was up in the garage and I was staining some cabinets. I actually just looked down and realized I still had paint all over me. I thought it was latex paint. I thought it all came off, but it didn't. I was staining some cabinets and I was just telling the story that I was feeling in that moment, the metaphor of taking off all of these layers of polyurethane, which are so metaphorical for the layers that we might have on our heart and our soul that we carry with us. And they stem from emotions, like the common emotions that we carry in our heart and our soul and on our shoulders. It feels like it's almost literally that we're carrying this weight of shame, guilt, fear, doubt, blame, all of those emotions that can sabotage us and rob us of our peace. But one of the emotions that can just take hold of our heart, possibly forever, is grief. And when I talk about grief, obviously there's the grief that we all, might be familiar with, the grief of what we're going through globally, things that are not the same, in our nation, in our lives, maybe the loss of a loved one. There's also grief that we travel through with just so many other things that might be hidden, that everybody might not see. And those are the emotions that we carry, the relationships that have gone haywire, the regrets in our life. We can grieve over that. That's grief as well. We often attach grief to, like I said, the major things that we see. But there's also the hidden little bits of grief. So if you have grief in your life, whether it's what might be perceived as a large dose of grief or a minor dose of grief, whatever it is, that's what we're going to talk about today. How to overcome grief. And it all starts with validating it, feeling it, and then finding the ways and the tools and the hope and the inspiration of how to overcome it. And that is what my beautiful guest today, that one of the things that we're going to talk about, Kristen Weber. She is so many things in her world. At the top of the list is she's a comedian, she's a speaker, and she's an author. And she is joining us. She's my friend. She is joining us from Atlanta, Georgia. So good morning, Kristen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for taking time today. I know you have a very busy morning, most mornings, so I appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on. Hold on. I just like scrambled to plug my computer in, and now I have cords.
There
we go. Now we're stage ready.
I love it. The magic of live, we can.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. I was just bragging about you, and I was bragging about you earlier in the week when I did a video promo about you, just that you're so accomplished as a comedian and author and speaker. What I would love to know, I always love to start is the beginning of my guests and their stories. So in the beginning for you, when you were a kid, you were just little Kristen going through your life. Did you know you were going to be a comedian or end up doing what you're doing now?
No, I don't think comedy was on the page or on the radar really. Although I do joke in my act that there was some foreshadowing that I would go into comedy, because if you saw me do, my parents put me in gymnastics at first, and there's a video, I use it in my set, and my sister put it together because that's what sisters do, of me just like failing so badly at gymnastics as a kid. And I don't know if you can hear it on the YouTube video, but you can hear it if you turn the sound up really loud. You can just hear my dad sighing from behind the camera, just be like,
everything. Now we're trying gymnastics. So
yeah. And my sister was like a state champion gymnast. And then I was over there, like just Napoleon dynamiting every single event. And it's great in hindsight. Like, it was the gift I didn't know I was getting, being bad at gymnastics, until I started comedy and could show that video and exploit it for laughter. But I was just a very creative kid, and I was kind of in my own little world. I wasn't, I just kind of was a very right-brained child. And I think I was one of those kids, and I love encountering these kids in life now. I was one of those kids that was very awkward. I was probably a little quirky, but I had no idea, which is the best, is when it's when you become aware that you're a little bit different and kind of the odd one out, that you start to, have issues. But I had no idea when I was growing up that I was the weird one, even though looking back, I was like, oh, I was, in my room writing poems and songs and doing all that. And so, but it was fun.
I love you. The blinders of a child. That's so awesome, because, sometimes when we're more, if we're awkward, or, it's great that you said you didn't recognize it. Sometimes kids will point out our awkwardness, even if we're not awkward, it's so good. Did you ever have teasing or kids saying things to you because you did things in a different way?
Yeah. So I was homeschooled. So I did grow up in a bubble. So I had to like do my own bullying too.
High fives. I love
very gentle. Yeah. Homeschool high five. I was a very gentle bully. I was always kind of a sensitive. Yeah.
You have to bully yourself just to get the full experience.
Yeah, exactly. I think I was I only remember one time, and I was like 11 or 12, and it was some neighbor kid or something, said something about just me being a little weird. And I was like, cool. Like, it just didn't, fortunately. And I look back, I was like, what a gift to like have somebody tell you that and just be like, awesome. I'm going to go make a career out of that trait. Yeah. And of course, like later in my teens, then I got like really college. I got super angsty in like college and early 20s. I was probably what most teenagers experience earlier in their teen years. I was just a late bloomer all around in every aspect. Still am probably. I started having this self-esteem issues and everything that comes with. You're just like, I hate looking at my face in the mirror. Worst face ever. All of that stuff. And be like, I have no talent. I'm terrible. Just melodramatic.
Well, that happens in the teen years anyway, but what teens don't realize is those become your stories, and they
yes.
People don't want to know what you know. They want to know where you've been, what have you lived through, what shaped you. Nothing is wasted. We know that.
No, nothing is wasted, but I do, because it's so serious to you at the time. Like it's so deep. So at the time, like you can't laugh about it, but to get to a place in your life where you can look back at those moments and be like, I was crazy. Like I didn't know. I didn't understand. To go back and tell like 21-year-old me and be like, settle down.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. You're going to figure out how to fill a prescription.
Yeah.
You don't have to melt down.
Oh, I love it. You're killing it. You're killing it while you're adulting too. I love hearing you talk about your brothers and sisters, and you compare. You're kind of comparing them, and then you're the decisions that you're making about in your life. Tell everybody what you talk about when you refer to your siblings.
My siblings, you mean just like growing up with them?
No, you were, I was watching something that you did about comparing what they were doing.
Oh, okay. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. I joke about
comparison game. It's so
it really is. And my siblings all became major overachievers. They just did. And so the joke that you're talking about in my act, I go through all of my siblings and their accomplishments. Like my sister is she's a neonatal nurse, daily saves the lives of small babies. Both my younger brother and one of my younger sisters became officers in the Air Force. And then my other sister is a mathematical genius. And the joke that I say is that she can't decide whether she wants to accept the scholarship from MIT or Stanford for grad school. And I'm like, I totally understand that dilemma. Like I couldn't choose between Chipotle and Chick-fil-A for lunch. So I have my struggles too. But yeah. So, and then I tell jokes because someone had to keep my parents humble.
Yeah, I love it. You are doing such an amazing job as a comedian and touring around and all that you do. You are so accomplished. I know you
have no clue what I'm doing. Every success that I've had is sheer luck. And I'm just like, oh, cool. That worked out. Yay. People are like, how did you get that? I'm like, I don't know.
I have no idea. Oh my gosh. I want to go back to it. I want to get into that right away, but I want to just say that your childhood was not wasted because you have. I mentioned that you're an author. I want to talk about your third book in a minute, but you have two books that are already out. One is the Smart Girl's Guide to Mean Girls, Manicures, and God, and the other is the Smart Girl's Guide to Guys, the Galaxy.
God, Guys in the Galaxy.
God, Guys in the Galaxy.
God, Guys in the Galaxy. I know it's a mouthful.
I have to order those for our girls. I know they're.
Yeah. Those are kind of like meant to be humorous advice devotion books for preteens, and then more high school. The first one's more like preteen, middle school, and then the second one's more high school. And then I did have a third one come out. I did a terrible job marketing this one. It just kind of came out when life was crazy. And then it was called Choose Kindness, which was also for high school girls. And so that one came out, and I keep forgetting that hold on one second. My computer is panicking. Okay. So I kept forgetting that one came out, which I didn't know if it was a sign of success or just total arrogance. That I was like, oh yeah, I had another book come out. I totally forgot.
One more.
So I had those ones, and they're all so far to this point have been for teen girls, and just kind of teaching them the lessons that I learned, and which is so much. And this is what the hardest thing about being a teenager is, especially a teen girl, is you just have to go through it to learn that you're gonna be okay on the other side. Like people can tell you that all they want, but until you start experiencing it and learning kind of that life grit for yourself, how to handle those situations. I mean, that's what it is. You can get all the advice in the world, but a lot of things you just kind of have to learn and go through. But if you can be spared some of the bigger mistakes and stuff, that's helpful.
In your book, I'm sure it goes through a lot of things that they can look out for, but yeah, they do feel like and I know I did at that age. You feel like that's it. That's how your life is going to be, the way it is. And it's, for teens, there's so much to joke about, from our own lives. But, we have 3 girls and 2 are teens. And
Mhm.
my gosh, it's like, it's their own form of grief, because it can cause an anxiety and a stress in them, because they feel like it's going to last forever, but it does.
Yeah,
You
you
come out of
don't.
the season and you find the beauty in it and the lessons. And
Yeah, it's a sweet time that doesn't feel like a sweet time, but it is, because you're just experiencing everything for the first time. So you don't have that track record yet of seeing
yeah,
God's faithfulness, of seeing that you're going to be okay out the other side. Like, you will, it just, everything is, you just think it's going to be forever, which is funny, because and it's really like that from when you're born up until like really probably mid-20s is when you start seeing some patterns emerge, and you're like, okay, I've been through this once, I'll get through it again. But like my niece, when I was at my sister's, we were giving her a bath for the first time, and she just wailed and wailed and wailed, and I was like, it's because she's never done it. She at this point in her life thinks she's going to be cold forever. Right. Record that she's going to be wrapped in a warm towel, that there's going to be something that comes after. But after 2 or 3 bath times, she was like, oh, okay, I know the drill. But that first one, she's just like, I'm going to be cold and wet for all eternity. Like,
oh my God. Yeah, she doesn't know. She doesn't have that experience.
Yeah, she doesn't know. So it's like just that, but we just keep going through that over and over.
I love that. There's so much truth in that story. I have to ask you, did you going back to gymnastics, did you go straight from gymnastics to the accordion? And if not, tell us how you got there. And then of course the comedy mixed in with it as well.
So I didn't start playing the accordion actually until I was in my mid-20s. And I decided I had too many friends and I needed something to
move them out. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said I needed something to help get rid of some friends. Now I was like, what can I do to make sure that I will be single for all eternity? The accordion.
What else?
I mean, modern day chastity. That's another one of my jokes. So I went from gymnastics to swimming, and then I pretended to drown to get out of swim practice one day. And my mom was like, maybe we should reroute some of these activities. And then I started doing more like theater and creative writing, and that was much more fitting. Because pretending to drown is raw talent in theater, whereas it's a nuisance to everyone else who's trying to swim up and down those lanes, and you're just like, which is, I've learned, is not how people drown. People actually drown. It's a very quiet thing. So the fact that I was splashing around should have been a tip off to the coach, which I think he knew right away. I was like, he was like,
You had too much energy and air to actually be drowning. Oh my gosh. So yes, of course, acting was the next logical step. Perfect for you.
Yeah. And it wasn't, I love the writing more. I would not consider myself a performer first, even though I did a lot of performing in musical theater as a kid. It was always the writing aspect of things. I like observing and just figuring out how the world worked, and I like people's stories. And so even as a kid, I was probably more observant than the average kid about what was going on, especially as I got into my teens and college. And people don't always realize this. I am an introvert, and I'm not super talkative in situations where I don't know a lot of people. So I could just sit back, fade into the background, and just watch.
But you'll write about it.
Yeah, I'll write about it. Yes, I will throw you under the bus so fast.
It's just like when you're a kid or you're a comedian, you better be nice. Or, people better be nice to everybody, because you don't know who.
You don't know who has a blog, which actually I think everybody. Well, no, everybody has a vlog now. The video blog, which is such a weird word. But it used to be everybody had a blog, and now you don't know who's like filming anymore. Probably everybody. Just you can't act poorly in public anymore.
I know you'll end up on, exactly on YouTube. So the accordion, who suggested that? How did that come about?
I suggested that. Believe it or not, I did that to myself.
Well, look where it's gotten, though. You tour around with your accordion, and
I have always liked French music and European music, and that instrument is actually looked highly upon in that part of the world. And so I would listen to a lot of like movie soundtracks that had the accordion. And I was like, oh, you know what? I should just figure out how to play, because I was a pianist. I took piano from the time I was 7 years old and stuck with it. And so I was actually pretty skilled at the piano and understood music. So I was living in Los Angeles, and I just looked up on Craigslist back when people used to go there instead of Nextdoor.
Right.
And it was fun because it was a little more sketchy than Nextdoor. Nextdoor has taken some of the edge and excitement out of like buying things from random people online.
It was more of a mystery on Craigslist, you know?
It was like, you never, you're like, am I going to get this couch and also a stab wound? You're like, it's just always this, a little bit of, you always had to call somebody and tell them where you were going when you were doing Craigslist.
Yeah, send a copy of the address.
Exactly. Yes. You're like, I'm here. If you don't hear from me in 15 minutes, send the police to this address.
Yes.
But I looked up on Craigslist accordions, and I found this little $50 small junior accordion, and I bought it from this guy who lived in Glendale, California, and it really went down like a drug deal. I pulled into this back alley. I handed him a wad of cash, and he put an accordion in my car. I didn't even check it. Like, there could still be drugs in that accordion. Like, I could still be dealing drugs in that accordion. So that's my first accordion, and I learned how to play that just all on YouTube. I watched videos and figured it out. And then when I moved, I relocated to Texas for a few years and actually got some lessons, and then upgraded to a nicer accordion. And that's when I was starting to do more stand-up and have my own shows. Oh, there's a cardinal on my porch. Okay, sorry. That was
Oh my gosh.
But it's very exciting. I wish I could turn the camera without totally ruining my entire setup so you could see. But
if my husband is watching, he'll be like, that is so what I would do. It's that shiny object. It's like squirrel. Oh, there's a cardinal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see cardinals all the time. So
yeah, we have to call it out. Like, oh, a squirrel, a bird.
Yeah, and not a bright red bird.
We pay attention to those details. We have to pay attention. Hello, Cardinal.
Yes, hello. So anyway, then I started incorporating into my act and doing parodies with it. And then I had to get another accordion that I could travel with, because my accordion that I got, my real one, is just so big and heavy. It's hard to get in and out of the overhead bin, or
right.
The whole overhead bin, and then people like give you angry glares on the
comedy. They better be careful. Yeah, I wondered how you get through TSA with an accordion. I mean, do they have to?
Yeah, so most of the time it does get flagged. I allow a few extra minutes. And one TSA guy, it's funny, I think the ones at Atlanta airport know me now, because I've been through there so many times. They just know, they're like, oh, it's the accordion lady.
I mean, how many people really, honestly, how many people?
Yeah, I don't think they see a lot of them. Maybe Nashville, they see more going through there. But so one TSA guy, it got flagged, and he opened it up. He goes, I don't even know how to check this. And I was like, it would be my ticket to a life of crime. Like, I could hide things so well in there.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know how to check it, because how do you know how to check an accordion?
Oh my gosh. I love when you talk, I think you just said it. I think we were talking at the same time. Sometimes StreamYard cancels out the other person when someone's talking, but I think you said, did you say that's why you're still single?
A while ago, yes, because I play the accordion. It's a modern day chastity belt. It's a joke. I'm still single, but
I think I saw something that you posted where you're talking about COVID and the social distancing, and with the mask, without a mask, and then if you have an accordion, it's like people are just a lot farther away. Is that what it is? Like they're keeping.
Yeah, so you have to. It like literally forces physical distancing, because it's like out to here, so it like forced you to stay at least a foot away from another person. But yeah, I got sent. I didn't make that meme. I know the one you're talking about. Yeah, I got sent so many accordion social distancing memes over the course of COVID. I mean, I've seen them all, probably 50 to 100 times each.
Oh my God.
It's so fun.
Well, I love that you do that. And if you guys, you need to go to YouTube and check out Kristen's videos, or your website is KristenWeberOnline.com.
Yes, KristinWeber online traditionalspelling.com.
Oh, I love it. I loved watching your videos. I was laughing out loud, and my family was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm watching Kristen's videos."
Oh, yay!
I love the one about decluttering your closet, I think, and you have it to isn't it the song of Bohemian Rhapsody?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the Marie Kondo, which doesn't that feel like 100 years ago when we were all
I know.
closets and decluttering and everything.
For sure.
It was 2019. That was a year ago.
Oh my God. And some of my plants are still rolled up. That means I need to donate those because I don't own them. They obviously don't elicit joy, obviously.
Right.
That's how you know.
Yeah.
So gosh, you're doing so much with comedy and warming hearts and making people laugh and entertaining. But as you and I were talking about last week, it hasn't always been like that. One of the things we were going to talk about today is grief.
Mm-hmm.
You've traveled through quite a bit of that in your life. And I know a lot of people watching live, a lot of people who watch the replay are traveling through that as well, or they have that in their life, whether it's something that's hidden or it's a major event in their life. So would you just talk about that and what you've experienced and
yes, happy topic of grief. So yeah, I mean, you experience griefs on different level, I think, throughout your life. When you don't get the main part in a play, you were in that relationship you think is, or that person you think is going to be the one, and that falls through. There's a grief that goes with that, or not getting the career that you want. Like, there's little griefs that are throughout life, and and it's just learning to adjust to those expectations that don't follow through. And then you're like, okay, what's life going to look like now? So, I mean, I've been through many of those growing up, and then 2.5 years ago, is when it really started, just like boom, boom, grief, like deeper grief than I had ever experienced. So my brother was killed in Iraq in 2018. Mm-hmm. And then 4 months later, on the day of his funeral, a good friend of mine died. And then about 10 months after that, another friend of mine died. And then we were walking through, my grandmother had dementia, so we were kind of walking through the final stages of that. She passed away in January. So it was just sadness after sadness after sadness after sadness. And I call it grief stacking, kind of as a joke, because before you can even, they're just like, how are you processing that loss? And you're like, well, I kind of put that one on the back burner to deal with this most recent one. So you just start like stacking things that are sad in your life. Mm-hmm. And so that was, I think, trauma and loss, especially sudden trauma and loss. I've been doing some reading and research about it. Really, the first year is just shock. And I would attest to that. I would say, yes, that first year is just trying to survive. And if you think about, like, when you break a limb or when you get injured, there's that period of healing where you just kind of have to immobilize and cradle it. That is kind of what you have to do with your mind and your brain, except you have no choice but to do that. Like, it's just that period of time where you just are learning to live with it and live without this person. And it's so permanent that I think and you probably know this if you've studied grief, it doesn't go away. You learn to live with it and you learn to adapt to it. And because that person's not coming back. So with other things, you can find love again, you can find another career, you can do that, but that person is gone and your life continues on. So it's kind of learning to adjust to a future and a reality that you didn't ask for, you didn't want. What do I do with this story that I hate, that I don't like? In fact, I heard a speaker who I was at an event. Her name is Heather Dixon. She's amazing. You can look her up. And she talks about that. Like, what do I do with the story that I hate? I hate my story. I can't change my story. So how do I glorify God? How do I honor God? How do I positively impact the world when at that first year, I would say, hurts to breathe. Right. But then when you move past that stage and you start to kind of get back your ability to control your emotions. And like, that was a big thing for me when I could talk about my brother without crying. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And it doesn't mean that I loved him less or am any less sad, but it was that point where I was like, okay, now I feel like this is something that I can start using and talking about, because let's face it, tears are awkward. And just breaking down and crying is awkward. We don't know how to handle sadness and grief as a society very well. Mm-hmm. And so, and that's understandable. And I always want to respect that people don't know what to do when somebody's sad, and that's okay. Like we want to fix it and make it better, and you can't. So typically our response is avoidance.
Right.
But when I could start talking about things, I was like, okay, now I can start sharing his story and my story of going through grief, and that there is good on the other side. You can be, one of the things I like to say is that life can be very good and very hard at the same time. They don't necessarily cancel each other out. And in some ways, having experienced grief so deeply, I appreciate joy and humor and laughter and just those simple emotions, the positive emotions that we take for granted. I appreciate them so much more. And I treasure them because I've experienced the opposite extreme so deeply. So that's in a nutshell.
So beautifully spoken. And first of all, I'm sorry for all of your loss that you've experienced.
Oh, thank you.
Just, I remember when your brother, Captain Mark Weber, I remember seeing you talk about it and post about it. And it was definitely heart-wrenching. And thank you, by the way, for his service, what your family has.
Oh, thank you. I can't actually, I joke that I thank you. I trained him.
Yes, of course.
Brother, and I put him through boot camp when we were kids.
And your sisters too. Don't you have two?
Yes, I have, again, overachieving siblings. My one sister is still in the Air Force and another sister in the Coast Guard. So, and all credit goes to them. I didn't do any of the push-ups or math equations. It took them to get through the academies and boot camps. And I just,
Well, you're a family that supports them. So we say thank you. My husband, why he specifically said, will you please tell Kristen thank you so much? And, just from him that, for his service, just
thank you.
That.
Pass it along to my parents. They probably deserve the credit more than I do.
Yeah, just all that your family has sacrificed and endured for our freedoms in our country. So we honor that. We're very thankful. Through all of this, what got you through? I know your faith is so strong. We talked on the phone today for about 40 minutes and I loved every minute of it. Just hearing your testimony, being on the other side. So would you talk to the faith element and how that got you through?
Yes. So I think you experience and it sounds so strange. And I think before I went through this, I wouldn't have understood completely when someone said this, because God took away a lot. Mm-hmm. And so to say I felt the love of God and Jesus in a totally different way, and in a deeper way than I had ever felt before, sounded counterintuitive, because it's like, well, why didn't God spare your brother or your friends, or, give your grandmother a more dignified exit from the world? Mm-hmm. I mean, the world is broken and it has fallen, and these things they're terrible. And the thing is that Jesus grieves right along with you, because, he more than anybody knows this is not how it is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And so you experience that really God holding on to you. I've heard it both ways, hold on to God. Really, he holds on to you because you just have no energy to pursue God. Which is what, when life is good, I'm getting 8 hours of sleep, I can get up and read my Bible and pray and, look for ways to be kind and compassionate and all that. But when you are grieving and you're just kind of hanging on by a thread, you can't even focus enough to get through a verse of the Psalm. So you really do feel God holding on to you. Yeah. And the other unique thing that happened is I asked again, and I asked this when I was in my 20s. I'll backtrack to this. I am a skeptic. My first question when anything happens or when anybody tells me anything is that true, and why? Or why should I believe that? And so the fact that I'm a Christian is a miracle, because, I believe we all have faith in something. Even if you are an atheist, you have faith that there is nothing. Mm-hmm. So in my college years, I grew up in a Christian home. I would say I even had a relationship with Jesus, but I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to follow God 100. Like, I will live in a way that honors him. I will make that my number one priority if this is true. If it's not true, if it is made up and we're doing it to feel better about ourselves or to have some sort of like moral superiority, I'm out. I'm not going to follow it because I want to go do other things. And so I went through a lot of apologetics, which is basically it's going through like, how did we get the Bible? How do we know God is real? How do we know Jesus is who he said he was? Was he just a moral teacher or this? So I really went through all of that, and I looked at other religions and how they compared. And my dad is kind of wired that way too. So he was able to answer all my questions. He was never threatened by any of the questions that I asked, to his credit. So that really strengthened my faith. I got to a point where I was like, okay, I mean, everything takes faith. I have enough evidence now that I feel like it's not a blind faith. I am in it. I'm going to put Christ first. I'm going to live to honor God. That's going to be my number one goal in life. So now, cut to a little more than a decade after that, I again was like, what if this isn't true? What if my brother's not in heaven? What if there is no heaven? And I was able to kind of draw from some of the stuff that I had learned in my early 20s that I had researched and went back and kind of walked my through that. Okay, I know the Bible is true because I did all that research. I know that there is a God. I know that I just basically went through logically, like how I knew. And then I was able to take comfort in that, okay, heaven is real. The hardest thing for me was the Bible doesn't say a lot about heaven or what it is or what it looks like or what it's going to be like in that, like when you die, but before Jesus comes back to end everything and we get our bodies back. So that was the only part. And I still don't have answers. So I had to become okay with not knowing 100%, like where my brother and friends are in this time. Where will I be when I die? Like, I don't have all the answers for that still, but I am more confident now that God is good. God knows what he's doing, even though all death is tragic and we're all going to die at some point. For whatever reason, he chose to take my brother, my friends, my grandma in the way he did. He will be glorified through that. And it is for my good in some way. Mm-hmm. He's going to work it because I am his child and he loves me. He will work it for my good. Mm-hmm. It will not always feel like it's for my good. But it will be. And it's sweet because now on the other side, I am starting to see good come out of it. And I always say, like, I love that there's like metaphors in real life for scripture things. And we always talk about like faith growing. You plant that seed. The best, most healthy crops grow in poop. Like we fertilize with
true. Right.
But we're seeing like this year has been, I mean,
such a good analogy.
Yeah, it's just
I'm all about analogies and metaphors.
Yeah. So all that stuff is like more beautiful fruit is coming from that. I have changed. I wish I could be who I am now without having gone through what I went through, but there's no way that would have happened. I am a totally different person than I was 2.5 years ago. And I still have a long way to go, clearly, obviously.
We all do.
But just things that I put so much weight on and things that I cared so much about, I'm a much more relaxed, and weirdly, I'm less anxious than I was, which it should have been reversed. Like I should have become way more anxious through all of that, but I've actually calmed down a lot. And I think it's because I've just over and over, I've seen God provide, not just like physically and material, but emotionally. He's brought, when I was traveling so much after my brother died, and you're just so deep in that grief. And then I was on the road with stand-up. That's when it started picking up. And I would get to a city and somebody would just out of the blue who lived there, who I hadn't seen in, I don't know, a year or something, was like, hey, I think I saw on Facebook you're in town. You want to go get breakfast or something? And just having that connection was so important at that age. And just over and over, things like that would happen. I was never alone. And I should have been alone all the time with stand-up.
That's the way it goes, usually. Yeah.
Yeah, because you show up, you go in a city, you meet people that you've never seen before. I'm not going to unload my whole story on them. Like I've known them for 10 minutes. So to have somebody that I know knows me, just be like, hey, can I come sit in the green room with you? You're just like, yes, please just.
He had his own tour planned for you. Not that you were on a tour, but it was the tour of the other people that you didn't see coming that were.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He's always
tour. Yeah. So I have seen God take care of me in ways where you just tangibly see, okay, he cares. Like, not just about, I think we tend to have two views of God depending on what you've seen and know. And we either see him as this just God waiting with a lightning bolt to strike us when we sin, or we see him as and everything's okay and do whatever you want and as a teddy bear. And really, he's a mix of the two. He does care about what we do and our actions because he knows what's best for us and he loves us. But also he cares so much about our lives and our hearts. And I really saw that aspect of him where he just gift after gift and blessing after blessing in this season of just extreme sadness was something I look back on. And I wrote one thing I did do well, and I would advise this if you're going through a season of grief, is just write down all those moments that God shows up or something good happens so you can go back and reflect on them, because we forget so quickly when something bad starts to happen. Our instinct is, okay, where are you, God? Are you going to show up this time? We just think the last time he shows up will be the last time he shows up. And so having that track record for me to go back and be like, okay, he showed up here, he showed up here, he was faithful, he was faithful. And then when something bad happens that you don't understand, you also can kind of trust that, okay, I don't see the good in it now, but maybe down the road I will. And then you can look back on those instances too in like 10 years from now and be like, oh, now I kind of see what he was doing.
Yeah, the power of journaling. And sometimes I don't want to write a lot. I'll just write a little bit, like a little note, but it's so powerful. And if you do it consistently, you can even take the day that you're on now and go back all those years in your journal, just read that one day. But it is so powerful. And that's such good advice, because we don't often give credit to that thread of God in our life because we don't remember.
Right.
And even when we're in such a troubled time, if we write it down, just write it down. And you can be angry, you can be doubt-filled, you can, whatever the emotion is, just write it down. That's so important. You spoke to so many great things there. One was having doubt, doubting God, wondering why God would do what he's doing. And then the other powerful element in our life is to have people. God will put those people in our life if we ask for it. We'll, and we may already have those people in our life that you can ask those questions to. You talked about having your dad. He did not judge you. He was there to answer anything, and that's so important. I know that must have been, when looking back, such an important element in your life.
Yes, absolutely. I'm fortunate. I love like deep conversation, and I love talking about like philosophical things, even if I don't end up seeing eye to eye with somebody. I always enjoy those conversations. That's just how I'm wired and my mind is wired. Yeah. And that was another thing that I realized too, is how I saw, looking back, how God had kind of set up just a network of friends. And I have good friends and good friendships, which I think I take for granted more than I should, because we're not entitled to good friendships and we're not entitled to that. So it is definitely a gift. But just how God had kind of put people in my path that would understand and be able to be there during that season was amazing. And friends that I can talk honestly to when you're angry, when you're just having a rough time, and they understand, and no judgment. You can just go and sit on their couch and like stare at their wall, and
yes,
it's fine. It's like
that's a friend. The one, the person that will be there for the ugly cry or whatever it is. Christians,
And those friendships don't happen overnight. So the fact that I had already kind of had some of those in place was it was beautiful. Because at least I know for me, I wouldn't be comfortable having just met somebody and being like, and people are so kind to offer, but I wouldn't be comfortable having like just met somebody and then going and they're just like crying on their ottoman or something like that. Like, it's just not who I am. But somebody that I know better and who I know knows me and knows that I'm not always like this. Like, I'm not an overly emotional person. Like, I can usually control that. And so being out of control of that was a little jarring for me. So I needed to be around people who I felt very safe and who knew that I was not always like an emotional basket case. Because it definitely was, it was weird to be out of control of your emotions when you are typically a little more calculated in that area. Right. If that makes any sense.
No, yeah. And those people they're so important. And I know I'm a 100% believer in having your tribe, having your people that when you don't feel comfortable, they make you feel comfortable. And
and my friends
for you. I wanted to share something. And of course I asked your permission before I did this, but I wanted to go back to Mark for a minute. And he wrote something that I would love to share with everybody. And I asked Kristen if she was okay with this, but he wrote this. And it was, how long before? 11 years. He wrote it 11 years. Talk about God being spread. He wrote this 11 years to the date of when he was laid to rest in Arlington Cemetery.
Yeah.
This was read at his memorial. This is a letter that he wrote, and I love it. I love it shows his faith, and his mindset, and it's so inspiring. So I would love to share this. This is what Captain Mark Weber wrote. He wrote, "I know God put me here for a reason, whether it be for lessons learned or whether it be for something else, I do not know. But I do know that God is in control, and I will one day get off this sinful, cursed world and be with God in paradise, doing everything the way it was created for. In this world, I have seen the cold darkness, and I want to push it back. That is another one of my goals, to help push back the darkness and help people. The biggest, most helpful thing for me was trusting in God's sovereignty and his plan for my life. I knew that God's plan for my life would not be thwarted. On the contrary, God was instilling character through all of this to prepare me for the calling he has set on my life. The same is true for you. I know that all of this is preparing you for something special. This gives me a great deal of peace. I urge you in troubled times to read the Bible, to pray, to cry out to God for help, wisdom, and discernment. We do not know how far the ripples reach or the impact of our own wake, what it has on others. The light of Christ shining through us has profound eternal significance of which it affects, we will not see until we gain an eternal perspective." Captain Mark Weber.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that is just so beautiful and so powerful. And I have it all. What a gift. And I had to share that because it speaks so much truth.
Yeah. Yeah, he really did have an understanding of the eternal perspective. And I love when God makes all things new, because I'm always like, why? I want to know everything. Like, we know God's going to make all things new. There'll be a new heaven and a new earth, which means a new earth means there'll be familiar things to us. And so that means like all the things that we wanted to do and explore, like we're going to get to do that when everything is made new and Jesus comes back and ends all this, everything that's going on this, like he said, sinful planet. And we feel that, like, we just feel the sin and the brokenness and the weight of all of that. So yeah. And so the calling part, like my brother's calling is finished. Like his reward is in full. He has seen Jesus face to face now. But we have not finished our calling. So now it's that, I call it, where I am, it's the mix of like grit and grace, like developing that grit to get through the hard times, but also having the grace to not become bitter or angry. Like I always want to be moving in a way that my heart is being softened toward others and being more understanding, and also really living, because our days are numbered. And so I don't know what the question was or what
Not just living, but I love that you said really living.
Yes. So I think I really live now. And it's funny because my goals have changed so much. My perspective has changed so much, but I do feel like I live a lot more now on the other side of having experienced tragedy and loss than I did before. So I try to keep like the whole self in mind, body, mind, spirit. I live more simply. I don't think I'm trying to accomplish everything that I was trying to accomplish before. I'm okay not achieving everything. I actually, I would prefer it. In fact, after this next book comes out, and I finish, like, once all my speaking dies down, I was like, I might just go get a job as a music teacher in a school, quit social media, and just live life that way. I was like, that sounds amazing.
You really reevaluate, don't you? After a while in life, you just want to do just live peacefully, simply.
Yeah. And I love teaching. Yeah. And so I don't feel the pressure to really have my name remembered, I think, like I did a few years ago. And, but also I think other things that I've learned are important, are like taking care of your body and I've become much more into like exercising, and I
saw that you were doing a push-up challenge, girl. You were.
I was. I did 5 push-ups.
The challenge with.
So one of my teammates I also do jujitsu, which I started actually after. It's really good for self-defense, but it's also a very intense workout. I started doing that after, I didn't mention it, but I'll bring it up because this is the most street cred I'll ever have. I got out of getting mugged at knife point in Costa Rica, which, as it's so weird to be in that experience as a comedian, because the normal person side of me was like, I could get stabbed. And the comedian side of me was like, but if I don't, this is going to be comedy gold. So I thought that immediately, like when he pulled the knife, a part of me was like, yes. But then the other part, like the real, like rational, logical side of me was like, you got to get out of this, Kristen. Like, this is serious. Like, and you're in a foreign country, so who knows what could happen.
You had me laughing about that. What you
because I was wearing like green Crocs or something like that. So I was like, yeah, part of me probably deserves this.
Oh my gosh, I laughed out loud. And then, of course, as you know, I texted you the other day. I was at a volleyball game and there was a girl wearing green Crocs. And I had to say, I've not seen green Crocs.
Right.
And then I had to take a picture of just her feet and send it to you and say,
right, I appreciate it.
That made me laugh. Like, well, I deserved it.
Yes. So, and I also probably self-defense was just something that was on my bucket list, because like when you're a girl doing comedy in clubs, it doesn't even matter if you're attractive or young or anything, like guys just follow you sometimes. So I was like, I should probably learn how to just like defend myself in the most basic way. And so
carry the accordion with you. And
yes, that's the number one self-defense, is just start playing like da 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 da, go running.
I'm out of here. Like,
one of my sisters said, she's like, Kristen, if anyone tries to attack you, just start telling one of your jokes. That'll scare anybody off. And I was like, oh, thank you, sister.
You know what? If you could just put that in a Hallmark card, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of Hallmark, I was watching your bit about Hallmark movies. I have to show it to my daughter because I do that all the time. The movie, the storyline, and hey, those are about to ramp up coming up here.
I know. I'm about to be able to repost that parody.
I secretly watch them. I start in October, and then I'm more open about it. In November, I do. Yeah. Oh my gosh, so much greatness with you, girl. I wanted to ask you to just talk. You talked about we can just feel the resiliency and how you've learned, like you said, to balance between grit and grace and going through all the grief and the grieving, and that I know you were talking about how it's not a sin to doubt and to ask questions. But I wanted to ask you if there's somebody on here that just is not. They don't have faith. They have never, maybe they've just been caught in a lot of mandates, maybe more of a world in versus relationship. Where would you tell that person to begin?
So if somebody is truly searching, if you are looking, so the questions that I asked myself first were I always start with, is there a God? Is there one being that created everything, all of that? For me, that was an easy one because there's just too much order in life for it to have come from order doesn't come from chaos in any sphere of life. So for me to look at the world and be like, there's too much order and there's so much detail. For me, it was easy to say, okay, I believe there's a God behind that. Then the question was, is this God knowable? Is he personable? Does he care? And so that is where you find, if we're Christians, Jesus. Mm-hmm. And I would say start with the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, where you see God in person. And you learn about Jesus, and you learn the heart of God through Jesus. And Jesus came before air conditioning. So that's how you know he was in it for our good and for us. He could have waited to come now, and there's just a lot better.
Right. Yeah, with the virtual world, it could have just been spread so much faster, but he did it when it was, at a time where it wasn't as easy. Yes. Yes,
exactly. So I would say start with that and see who Jesus is, because, and again, this is getting really into, you're like, what? Jesus is the Son of God, but is also God, because we have, the Trinity, the God, Jesus, and then the Holy Spirit. Which sounds like all kinds of crazy stuff. If you just start looking at Christianity, you're like, what? How can you judge anybody else's beliefs? You believe some crazy things. But if you think about time, the past, present, future, all three things are time. The past is never the present, present's never the future, but they all exist. So it's kind of, if you think there are other things in the world that are three, but separate, but one. So I would start with looking at who Jesus is, and then ask the tough questions. I don't know, everyone's minds are so different. My mom, her faith is so strong. Naturally, she's never had to research who wrote the Bible. How do we know it hasn't been changed? Where I wanted to know all that stuff. How do I know, from Genesis to Revelation, how do I know all the authors were really hearing from the Holy Spirit and all of that? But she's never knew. She's like, I just believe it and I know it. So if you're like that, start with reading the Bible from cover to cover. If you doubt that the Bible is real, go look up some books. There's a really good one called How Do I Know the Bible is Real? And also one called Case for Christ. Lee Strobel is a good name. And just look into it. And God is not threatened by your questions. He's not threatened by honest searching.
Right. That's not a sin. Letters from a Skeptic is another great book.
Oh, I haven't read that one. I'll have to look that one up.
It's actually if I remember correctly, it's a son writing it to his dad, who was then a non-believer. But so many great resources out there. And what really helped me, because it's always been about faith and the feeling and the seeing rather than the research. And then when I went back and did research, it's amazing when you read the Old Testament, all the threads. Indicating Jesus, and it's just prophetic as to what was going to happen, and it did, and that was helpful for me, because I'm not necessarily an analytical person, but then I say, well, wait a minute, okay, and then I spent a lot of time during the quarantine doing that and studying that to be more powerful, but it's also the knowing too and experiencing it in your life. And you also were at a point, I imagine, that a lot of people are hoping to be at or have experienced, where you surrendered and you said, show me, and just asking God to reveal that truth and who he is in your life is very, very powerful. We don't give that enough credit in our world.
Absolutely. And you are so correct in that, even though all of our journeys to Jesus might look different, at the end of the day, it is a relationship with your Savior, with the God of the universe, a personal relationship with him. And that does come with emotion. And that comes with, if you look at just our relationships with people, it comes with a certain extent of kind of logic, getting to know the other person. And then also emotions are tied into relationships, whether you want them to be or not. What was the question? I think.
You answered it. I was just adding on, and we were just going back and forth talking about it. Was just, where would you tell somebody to begin?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
You know what I loved? Earlier, you started off, you were talking about a child, giving a child a bath, and they feel like they're in that tub, and it's going to feel like that forever. They're going to be cold and wet, and
Yeah.
the comfort of that warm blanket. And I love when you said that, because I immediately just picked up this metaphor of that's Jesus. He's the warm blanket. And it's not about, it doesn't have to be about, because a lot of people are like, where do I go? Do I go to church? Which Bible do I buy? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? It's not about what you do. It's about just asking and then feeling that warm, he will give you, you will sense, you will know that warm feeling blanket. And then what we're going through is, we were just talking about grief, whatever it is, whatever emotion, it won't be like that forever. And I love when you say so eloquently that it will not be like that forever. And that is the best advice. Lean on Jesus. That's that warm, I always call it the warm blanket right out of the dryer feeling, that it's a feeling, and everybody is entitled to that.
Yes.
Surrender and ask. Oh my, wait, now before we go, I want to ask if there's anything else you want to share, but I want to talk about your book coming out in February. Very excited.
Yes, I know. I can't believe it. I'm so excited for it. It's the first book I've written for adults.
It's called
comment on Amazon.
Yeah.
What
was that? What'd you say?
I said it's the first book for adults, which means they can write reviews on Amazon. The teenagers don't typically leave any reviews. So now this is where the rubber meets the road.
I love it. It's called a book about purpose, trusting God, and obviously burritos.
Yes, adulting for Jesus. Yes. Is that listed on the... I was like, do I need to fix something somewhere?
No, I love it.
I'm the world's worst marketer.
So the actual title is Adulting for Jesus.
Yes. The actual title is, sorry, I just got totally sidetracked by my hair. It's starting to dry, and as it dries,
beautiful. It's a beachy wave. Awesome. I love it.
Stop it. We can just stop the show now and just keep saying nice things about my hair.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so the book is called Adulting for Jesus. And yes, the subtitle is a book about purpose, trusting God, and obviously burritos.
Obviously.
Yes.
I love it. Well, we're excited about that. I'm excited to order that coming up in February. Or tell us, so Amazon, when can they start ordering if they're interested in this book?
I should know the answer to that question.
Maybe
the poor publishers. I don't know that they've worked with a comedian before. Maybe they have, but they're just like, what about this? I'm like, I don't know anything.
Oh, it's awesome. Well, I can't wait. I'm going to be waiting, and I'm sure you'll have something on your website.
I will, yes.
And they go to, it's Kristen Weber online.com. That's where you can find her. Oh my gosh. Is there anything else you want to share, add before we go? You've been so great. So much.
Oh, no, just thank you. Thank you so much. I know I can be a little scattered and everywhere, but you were so gracious. I really appreciate it. This was fun. Thank you for having me on. So hang in there. Those are the 3 words that's when you're sad. You're just like, hang in there. And you're just like, okay.
Yeah, that was on every poster. Remember in school and junior high, you could order posters. There was always the cat hanging from the branch. That was
yeah.
Okay. Speaking of branches, is the cardinal still there? I've got to know.
No, he left. He was for a little while, and I did such a good job of looking at the screen and not him.
Oh, that's awesome. Great. Listen, from one creative to another, I give you so much credit. He's probably waiting for you to play the accordion for him, so I will let you go.
Okay.
Thank you. I know everybody just received so much from you. So thank you so much, Kristen. I'm gonna hold on because I want to talk to you backstage, but I'm gonna take you off. But just thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Okay, very appreciated. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us. Isn't she? She is amazing. So there you go. In case you didn't already know, there is so much hope, no matter what you're going through. Grief, top of the list, oftentimes shame, guilt, fear, whatever it is, whatever that polyurethane is on your heart, dig in, tell the truth, feel the feelings too. That's so important, to allow yourself to feel the feelings. You know, it's so important in our world today. It's fast moving, go, go, go. And it's like, get over it. Don't feel it, repress it. And it will rejoin you, maybe in a way that's causing a physical anxiety or a stress, or when in your muscles or whatever it is. Honor it, feel it, find your tribe of people you can trust. But most importantly, as Kristen said, and I wholeheartedly agree, lean on Jesus. He is that warm, cuddly blanket that will always bring you the comfort that you need. Okay, I can't wait for next week. But until then, I wish you all a beautiful week. Thanks for joining us. Bye, everybody.